Welcome to Muncon 2021. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Laura Froelich, and I'm with Snohomish County Surface Water Management, and I will be moderating a panel session today, Business Inspection During COVID. Our panelists include Kevin Brennan with City of Tacoma, Arthur Lee with Snohomish County, and from the City of Seattle, Angela Peterson and Erik Lust. Presentations will last about 35 minutes, and then we'll have a Q&A session with the panelists. Please type your questions in the Q&A box, and after the presentations, we will move to question and answer. So I'll go ahead and give it to Kevin to start the presentation.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Kevin Brennan. I'm with the City of Tacoma, and I supervise our general business inspection group and our source control program. Today's presentation is business inspections during COVID-19 and specifically referring to 2020. We're going to talk about our normal annual inspection goals, our mid-March shift in priorities when inspections stopped, how we social distance with the help of technology, some spill and complaint highlights, how and when we restarted our inspections, and our new inspection goals. So the City of Tacoma operates under a Phase 1 municipal stormwater permit. We're a medium MS4 with approximately 221,000 people in our population. Our inspection areas are 4 different areas within the city. We have the north end, which includes downtown and mostly residential. The Port of Tacoma is our heavy industry. Southeast and southwest. And our annual inspection goals are about 500 business inspections, which is a mix of stormwater and wastewater focus. We have 200 wastewater devices, that's grease and oil water separators. And we look at 600 private stormwater devices, and we have 300 public. And we get 400 to 600 spill and complaint calls a year. In March, our inspection stopped and our priority shifted. Immediately, we're trying to figure out who's telecommuting and who needs what equipment to accomplish that, what kind of online training options are out there, how to safely respond to spill and complaints, and what's the correct COVID-19 PPE. Once we identified that PPE, it was a matter of finding it, securing it, and managing it. Face coverings, hand sanitizers, and sanitizing wipes were high demand and low stock, so it was hard to find. So when we found it, we made sure we secured it and had it in places we could use it. I'm frozen. There we go. All right, social distancing with the help of technology. With telecommuting, it allowed us to have about 15 of the 18 staff that make up our source control group work from home and keep us connected. We took advantage of online training, looking at FEMA's NIMS and ICS training, and Ken Carey inspector training was a good fit for a few of the newer inspectors. We used virtual meetings on a Teams format to keep us connected. It was great. We could share photos, see each other's faces. And then we utilized our mobile workstations in our vehicles and iPads or tablets technology in the field to reduce our office staff. And here's an example of our mobile workstation here. It's one of our inspectors, Junior, in his van. We have 5 vans in our fleet that are capable of facilitating an office. On the right is a picture of Junior doing an inspection with his iPad. This was all technology we used as a convenience before and efficiency, and now it was a matter of safety. Spills and complaints. I'm highlighting these spills. These were unique. They kind of appeared to have a commercial source, and this is at a time when we're not doing business inspections, so it caught our attention. On the left here, we have a total resin that somebody abandoned in an alley. Further investigation, we learned the alley was not even a public alley. It was all part of people's private property. So we worked with the homeowners to get that resolved. On the right, somebody had dumped a bunch of tires. And that's just one alley. They did that in 2 alleys nearby each other. This is a sewer lift station. and we got a complaint from the sewer crews telling us that propane tanks were floating in. Really thought that was unusual. I've never seen anything like this. The pipe that flows into this is 48 inches, so there's room for a propane tank to do that. But, you know, that also limits what lines could be contributing propane tanks. So we started our search and we found in a BNSF property where it's vacant, not a lot of people except for a homeless community that were also living in RVs. We found a manhole structure with a lid off. So we worked with the sewer crews to secure a lid and really glue it on so it couldn't be removed again. And that problem went away. Sanitary sewer overflows. We had 5 SSOs in 5 weeks. That's something we might see in a year normally. So again, that caught our attention. There was a lot of emphasis on everybody sanitizing their homes. And I mean, I think if you thought COVID was in your house, you're going to throw that rag away that you're using and probably into the toilet because you don't want to see it again. So all of our backups were apparently at that time related to rags and solids in our sewer. We were fortunate on 2 of them where we were able to isolate it. One was a residential block. They were at the head of the line. So we did a mailing to those addresses and asked for their cooperation, not to dispose of wipes and other non-flushables in the toilet, but instead use the garbage. There was a commercial property that we suspected as being the source of another one. And we have a camera, a time-lapse camera. It's a Brino cam that we've been using for a number of years now to monitor our flows. So we thought, well, this would be a great opportunity. We can monitor their flow. We don't have to go into a business inspection. Let's see what we can see on their pipe coming into our system. And sure enough, we found, I cherry-picked this photo because I know everybody's digesting the lunch right now. But this is a photo of their inlet and a latex glove that came through in one of the pictures. The photos were taken every 30 seconds, so it's not everything, but it's a snapshot. We're able to work with that business, and they installed a screen in their side sewer to trap those non-flushables and prevent them from coming down the line. They didn't feel they were going to be able to fix the problem through educating staff. So we get to the end of May, and based on some of these spill calls and just the environment we're seeing in the field, and looking at Ecology's website where they had stated that they were doing inspections, we felt comfortable moving forward with inspections in June. So with that, we were going to limit our exploratory inspections. We're going to schedule inspections, businesses where it wasn't open to the public, and we're going to try to limit the unannounced, avoid nursing care facilities or like medical facilities. And you just use discretion with every inspection. If an inspector didn't feel safe or the business didn't want to go through with an inspection, we'd find other ways to get the information we needed to. So we drafted a written plan, an SOP for our inspections, when to schedule them, when to use discretion for guidance for inspectors going out in the field. And a environmental compliance COVID-19 reconstitution plan was written, outlining PPE and social distancing standards for the office, for vehicle use in the field in general, and then inspections, just to help people answer the questions they might have coming out in the field. So when we developed our new KPIs or our goals for the year, it was all focused on meeting our stormwater goals. Some of the work that we do is wastewater related, but we decided to push that to the side and just focus on our core NPDES goals. And that included our potential pollution stormwater businesses. That cut 200 inspections out. We got rid of our grease and oil water separators. That cut another 200. So that reduced our workload and helped us get it done. We had lost about 2.5 months of inspection work. So that was a needed cut. If we did have issues with grease or any business, we still left it on the table to inspect, but we weren't going out of our way to inspect them. Private devices, 600, 300 public still, and we wanted to get 100% of our spill and response work done. And we ended up with 400 calls in 2020. And that's our presentation. I think our takeaway, the tools that we had originally being used, such as the workstation or the Brino cam for monitoring flows, these were all things that were initially spawned out of convenience and efficiency. And they turned out to be really valuable tools for social distancing and keeping us safe and moving at the same time.
Great. Thank you so much, Kevin.
You bet.
Okay, now we are going to move over to Arthur Lee.
Thank you, Kevin. I'm now loading up our PowerPoint, and this is Snohomish County Surface Water Management. I'm Arthur Lee, Interim Business Inspection Lead. And I'm here to present to you today our COVID adapted business inspection program. And we had to do a lot of changes to make things work in 2020, and now going forward into 2021, we have a lot more tools and procedures at our disposal. Our program goals remain the same. Hello, can you see all this now?
Could you click display settings up at the top and then swap your presenter view with the regular view?
Okay. Display settings, swap, presenter view, and slideshow. Here we go.
Yep, that's the one.
Okay, thank you. And this is waiting for the slides to readjust. Okay, I'm back to the slide saying source control program goals. And our goals remain the same. We want to reduce pollutants and runoff from areas that discharge to our MS4. We do that by educating business owners on pollution prevention practices. And we want to ensure implementation of BMPs. And supporting that is the Snohomish County Code, Chapter 753 SEC. And of course, all this comes from our NPDES Phase 1 permit. Our source control program requires us to apply source control BMPs operationally, and if necessary, structural source control BMPs or treatment BMPs, or both, to pollution generating sources. And we conduct inspections of such pollution generating sources at publicly and privately owned institutional, commercial, industrial sites to enforce implementation of the required BMPs to control pollution. We have developed a source control inventory that includes all businesses with a potential to pollute within our MS4. That includes those that were listed or guided to out of Appendix 8 of our permit. This includes NPDES permitted facilities. There's some overlap there. Also county sites. We have Appendix 2 of our permit, commercial animal handling facilities. And then on a complaint basis, we will inspect multifamily units and home occupations and others, provide outreach to them. That's our normal program, but last year we had this happen, the pandemic.
Arthur, I'm sorry to interrupt again, but we are seeing your slides a little bit zoomed in. Would you mind clicking the stop share and then try resharing?
Okay.
Thank you.
I think it may be because I have two screens.
Arthur, do you need to click slideshow maybe?
I thought I had.
It doesn't look like it.
Okay. Okay, I'm starting to reshare now. And I'm afraid it's showing up on my second screen. Are you able to see it in full view?
We're still seeing presenter view here. If you click the 3 dots at the bottom with the circle in it, you can hide presenter view and that should do the trick.
Okay. And so now you see a full screen with the state epidemiological chart.
No, we're back to your PowerPoint. Let's see. Yeah, I think we're hearing from the audience that this works for them. So if you're comfortable, I think the audience is comfortable.
Okay, they're seeing the entire screen this way. Okay, let's see what I can do a little bit more. I'll put this to full screen mode. And hopefully this is a little bit better.
That's great. Thank you, Arthur.
Okay, let me back up to the epidemiological chart. As you can see, we had several waves of surges. We began in late winter, spring of 2020. Then we had a summer surge. The worst surge was last fall and winter. And now, unfortunately, we seem to be on the cusp of a new surge in March and April. However, at the same time, there's hope. We have vaccinations just starting out. And so hopefully the vaccinations went out in this. We're all very much looking forward to that. But during the course of all this activity, of course, there were a number of proclamations, timelines that the governor provided. We had an emergency order in February 2020. Oops. It seems like my animation is not working. Are you seeing a full slide of all of the chevrons here?
Yes, we are.
Okay, then I'll just use that. This is the progression of governor's orders. And as you can see, it was like several stages of movements here in fits and starts. We had the emergency order. We had the stay home, stay healthy proclamation in March 2020. Then in May, we had some plan for reopening, a 4-phase safe start proclamation. Following that, we had some further evolution of guidance, but at the same time, the disease progressed and we had some rollbacks. And now we have just recently in December and January, the start of vaccination, a retooling of the reopening plan with a Healthy Washington proclamation, 2 phases regionally. And beginning in March, we had phase 3 reopening. We're now in April, and we've got schools, restaurants, and such operating at 50% capacity. We have outdoor sports now. This is all great. And we have the vaccinations. Let's hope things continue to improve, but we have to remain careful and vigilant. Adaptations that the county had to make. First and foremost, we had safety controls. The county basically shut down in March last year, and we had to figure out how to conduct our business safely. The county public works operations were an essential business. We finally got some public works wide safety protocols for non-construction activities, and we had construction activity safety protocols as well. These were sort of like a very large tool to work with something as fine-grained as the business inspections. And so we had to make some further adaptations, which we just came out with source control specific safety protocols last month. Along with these safety protocols, we had to figure out what sort of businesses we were going to be able to inspect during this time frame. We wanted to work with essential operations that remained open, but not so let's say, intense in terms of human traffic, such as clinics, hospitals, and so on. And so we began to move towards institutional types of activities, public works types of activities, special districts, so that we could better control our agreement on safety practices and better coordinate activities. We were able to adapt to that and began, we had slowed down back in March, and after getting our retooling in terms of safety practices and then making the pivot to institutions, we began reopening our business inspections in about the summer last year, and began to really ramp up in fall of last year. In doing so, we learned that we can operate with targeted gateway type coordination with people who have the decision-making power to open up inspections at a lower level, at operational levels, and also to implement corrections to source control requirements. We call that wholesale retail type of modeling, and that was a nice addition to our repertoire of drop-in inspections. You can simplify it to just planned and drop in. The focus was on our MS4 permit requirements. We acknowledge that there is overlap in several ways with other permits. There's the sand and gravel industrial type of permits, and in other locations we have overlap with phase 2s. And let me just show you this map. Well, let me just show you this map. I'll go advance a little bit and then back up. The county inspections were spread out all over, and they were rather far apart. And as you can see, we have a number of sites that actually represented multiple activities out in the county and also within the city. The city is the crosshatched area. And what we had to do was we inspected priority activities. We also inspected lower priority activities, but because of the need to economize, to be efficient in our tours, we just inspected everything at one location. So we scheduled based on location, based on priority, and we were able to do these things efficiently. And the locations that are within the cities, you'll notice those have upcoming phase 2 program requirements for source controls. And we noted that while we are inspecting for a phase 1 program, this would put the operators in a good stead for compliance with phase 2s as well. Not to say that they didn't have other requirements that they might have to meet. For example, those that had specific industry permits, like monitoring under their separate source control NPDES permits, they would have to meet those as well. Now let me back up. The kind of pivot that we did was most noticeable when you look at this chart. In 2019, much of our inspection was private oriented, 99%, whereas 1% was county and special district institutional type activities. And it's not to say that we don't have, more that we do with the county and institutions. It's just that we have a lot of private facilities that we inspect. In 2020, we did a big pivot. As you can see, we expanded to 32% county and special district inspections, and we dropped down to 68% private. And the county special district inspections could be even larger when you consider that some of the private inspections were on sites that were they were county owned, but they were leased by tenants, and but we counted them as private activities. And you can see farther down in this table that we did pivot away from more people traffic type of activities, such as restaurants, food services, accommodation, healthcare, and so on, and went more to those that had a natural separation or isolation, a little bit more control, like transportation and warehousing. We picked up quite a bit on that. Other places remained about the same. To recap, our site priority and inspection handling process, we looked at all county sites with the potential to pollute. We scheduled by location. We inspected priority activities and others as present. There was safety handling for certain locations and activities. Those interior spaces, for example, we would use in an interview approach. We're looking now into remote verification. That's probably pretty adaptable, using maps and photographs to allow for follow-up inspections or checking on implementation. We also have in our back pocket a further development of virtual inspection, where we've talked with our weatherization program, and it does involve more coordination with business owners and site operators to get permissions and to allow for use of video and so on. We haven't implemented that yet, but that's in our back pocket, so to speak, and we can bring that up if necessary. Hopefully we won't have to. And in the end, I'd like to come back to what it's all about. We are seeking good practices and behavior change over time. And we conduct our inspections using the same basic framework. We identify, evaluate, correct, track, and report per permit requirement. I want to thank you for this time to present our practices during COVID. This is our contact information for Laura Froelich and for myself. Thank you.
Thank you, Arthur. Okay, now we are ready to hear Angela and Erik from the City of Seattle.
Okay. Hello, everybody. Thank you for spending your lunchtime with us. Go ahead and get this into the PowerPoint presentation. Hopefully you're seeing my slide full screen now. Okay, I'm seeing some nodding heads there, so I'm going to take that as an affirmative. So, hello, my name is Erik Lust. I'm the manager of the Stormwater Unit here at Seattle Public Utilities. Angela Peterson's to my right. She's a business inspector with the unit. And I'm going to just kind of go over the overall hope of what we're planning to cover today. We're going to cover the scope of our work that we do. There are some nuances to what is done by this team, how the various changes that were implemented were managed. I wanted to cover some of the complexities around the safety perspective, for one thing, how we applied community and consistency values to the decision-making process. And Angela will go through where we ended up, which was with a hybrid inspection approach. So this is a picture of the team here in Seattle. And one of the things that I guess I'll start by saying that we don't do that many of the other jurisdictions, their stormwater team does, or at least their team of inspector does. We do not do restaurant inspections. We don't do wastewater type inspections. In the same building as us, there are other inspector teams, but the team that Angela is a member of, my team, so to speak, we do business inspections, so stormwater business inspections, private stormwater facility inspections, so the public stormwater facility infrastructure inspections are done by a different team. We do spills and complaint response, and we have IDDE investigations. One thing I thought I'd also mention is that even from the very first moment in March, when we got the stay home, stay healthy order, the spills, complaints, and IDDE work was deemed essential work, and it remained unchanged during the pandemic. So we do have some discretionary range where, you know, if it was a relatively minor incident, we wouldn't go out, whereas normally we'd probably go to just about every single thing. Some of the ones we would forego a site visit, and we certainly did maintain safe practices with the essential work. Another thing that's worth mentioning that was a little bit different, I'd say, about Seattle is that in 2018, we institute a fully mobile database solution. So we have had tablets and laptops and cell phones available for doing our data entry, our inspection work in the field electronically since 2018. So with that being said, one of the things that I think I'd like to cover from the management of how changes roll down to this team is the fact that Seattle is a large municipality. So in these cases, we have a pretty well-trained upper management group that institutes an ICS type approach to major disruptions in service. So we have that benefit. They can leverage, community outreach, like we have a Department of Neighborhoods. We have the PIO, communications. We have an emergency response team that directly could help with the ICS approach. But one thing that comes out of that is that there is a bit of a distance between this unit and the team that is making decisions. And it also, as you've heard in the other presentations, and I'll just restate it here, it was definitely a chaotic period at the beginning. You know, lots of changes. There was really a wide range, especially nationally, about, you know, where we were at, what we were doing. And so there was a lot of uncertainty there that was being handled, but being handled, I guess I'd say, slowly might be one way of putting it. So this slide I have in here, you know, this in my mind was the first real guidance that we received. I think between this and when the construction work was restarted, the guidance that came out for how to safely perform constructions, to do work at construction sites, was the first concrete guidance that, you know, I felt like I saw. And certainly the team that was working on rolling out guidance to SPU as a whole, you know, they jumped off from that point. As we started getting more and more concrete guidance, it defined how we could do our work safely. So I wanted to also just speak to the issue of safety and the complexity of it. And, you know, there's the obvious safety of just employee to employee or person to person per se. But I think that one of the things that should be said or at least acknowledged is that when you're interfacing with the public, you know, some people feel like masks are ridiculous. And then other people felt like if we, you know, if you even saw a SPU employee in a vehicle without a mask, that, you know, they needed to call and let us know that that wasn't, you know, what they felt like was a good way to represent SPU to the community. On top of all that, you know, just everyone was definitely under a lot of pressure. And if you ran a business at this time, I mean, there was a reasonably good likelihood that you were going out of business. At the very, very least, you're not going to make the most profits this year at all. So, but we strive to be community centered. It's something we really do take to heart. And so that created, you know, a real delicate circumstance where we wanted to be mindful of the pressures the community was faced with. And the way that we did that in the stormwater team anyway was by leveraging what we already had in our discretionary range. So Seattle, we do monetary enforcements routinely. If there are code violations that justify it, then we will apply monetary penalties. But we do have a discretionary range of when we apply NOVs. And so what we did was we just kind of tilted that back to the extreme edge of our discretionary range, where we tried to give people lots and lots of time, and we tried to, you know, try to give everyone the most benefit of the doubt as possible. I'll just put it that way. So I'm going to focus on the changes with regards to the business inspection process and the private stormwater facility inspections, because the other work was deemed essential and basically continued unchanged. And in this team, one of the business types that we share with the other inspectors is restaurants. So the grease trap, the team of inspectors who inspect grease traps, work out of this building, and we go to similar facilities for stormwater business inspections, and we wanted to be in alignment there. It wouldn't make sense if one team was not doing inspections in an effort to be mindful of the pressures that restaurants were under, and then the other team shows up and, you know, takes the heavy-handed enforcement approach. So there was some effort put forth to try to align across the city and certainly align within our group of inspectors on how we approached those businesses. Another thing that I wanted to kind of catch at the end of my part of this discussion is that by going slowly, we were able to leverage lessons learned as people became more and more accustomed to working in the new reality. So, you know, we all kind of got used to doing Zoom conferences, virtual inspections were a lot more palatable to businesses than they would have been prior to the pandemic. So at some point, you know, as we were kind of rolling out our hybrid approach, the world, so to speak, was ready for it. Additionally, we had a little good fortune that on our team, one of the members participated as with the census work that was happening at that time. And they had, you know, some really direct firsthand experience about going door to door, literally, talking to more and more and more people to try to get census data and how to do that safely. So we were able to take a whole bunch of lessons learned and bundle that into what we developed as our new approach to business inspections, what I call the hybrid approach. And Angela will be able to talk about that.
So first I'm going to talk a little bit about how we did business inspections before the pandemic. So most of the time we would do surprise inspections. This is because we like to see how businesses are operating during normal business hours. And because of this, we'd often go inside the building to find the manager or the site guide. And for larger facilities, we would do announced inspections, or we would schedule. And during the inspections, we would walk around the facility with a site guide. So first we decided that we would start off with doing phone inspections. And in order to do this, in order to prepare, we came up with a guidance script for phone inspections. This was new to us. We've never done inspections over the phone. So we did some practice runs internally. And like everyone else, we had to be flexible with the changes during the pandemic. Initially, we were going to do just strictly phone inspections with no field visits. And then we got approval to actually start going out in the field and doing site visits safely. And I'll talk about that in the next slide. So inspections during the pandemic, we limited surprise inspections to businesses open to customers. So that would be businesses like gas stations, auto repair, and a lot of retail stayed open during this time. And then we would schedule inspections for businesses with no public access. So this would be like manufacturing businesses, construction, and the industrial sectors. And so we would do inspections over the phone, or what we'd say virtually, wherever we could. And phone inspections, we'd mostly focus on low and medium risk businesses. And I would use whatever online resource is available. So GIS for drainage maps, and Google Maps is really useful, Google Street View, and a lot of inspector discretion. So sometimes you be comfortable with just doing strictly virtual inspection and call it good. Or we would do this hybrid model where I would call the business and would talk over the phone. And then later on, I would go do a site visit, and this would limit any in-person interaction. Other things we could do is drive up to the business and call them from the street, and then kind of do our inspections by ourselves. So safety during inspections, we avoided sectors such as medical facilities, schools, and food banks, just anywhere where people would congregate. Medical facilities because they are seeing COVID-19 patients, and obviously any businesses that aren't open due to the pandemic. We did not go inside the building as much as possible and avoid face-to-face contact, and obviously face coverings were always worn. So lessons learned. We typically give businesses 30 days to correct any violations, but I noticed during the pandemic, these corrective actions were taking longer to correct. This could be due to a variety of reasons. Contractors were limited to essential work, so they couldn't get their catch basins cleaned in time, or sometimes the business manager had to go into quarantine and they couldn't work on their corrective action. So we would work with the business and come up with a reasonable timeline to correct any violations. And then where appropriate, we would allow self-certification. That way the inspector doesn't have to go back to the business, and we're limiting that face-to-face contact. So this means that maybe they can take a picture of their correction or send us some contractor invoices. And it's important to respect the business's COVID-19 rules. I noticed that a lot of businesses set their own rules, just like we set our rules. So some of them weren't allowing visitors, or they had their own COVID-19 health screening form and temperature checks that I had to do before being allowed on site. And then finally, it's important to be mindful that a lot of businesses have been struggling during the pandemic due to reduced income, and that also contributes to corrective actions taking longer to complete. But for the most part, we noticed that businesses are welcoming during this time, and we're able to conduct full compliance inspections. And that is our presentation.
Thank you very much. Okay, great. So it looks like we have about 20 minutes, and we'll go ahead and start with a couple of questions, or I see one question in the chat. And just as a reminder, the question is for everyone on the panel, but if one person wants to jump in, and then if anyone wants to add to it, I think that will work well. So our first question is, how do you know when a new business comes on board that requires an inspection? So Kevin, yay.
We have a user survey program, and we have a gentleman in our department that manages this, and he works through tax and licensing. And as new businesses come in, he mails out a user survey. It's a questionnaire that the business fills out, and then he reviews that and determines if it's a business that needs to have a visit. We try to visit those businesses sooner than later to get them off on the right foot. And just also through that exploratory inspections in the field. There's a couple ways we find those businesses.
Great, thank you, Kevin. Did Arthur or Erik or Angela, did you guys want to add anything?
Yeah, I can speak to how SPU does it. So we do a few different approaches, and they all overlap. We leverage the business license database and use the NAICS codes as well as GIS layer exercise to kind of come up with a probable list, and then the inspectors manually go through that to come up with a list for an audit process, and then we'll do an actual site visit for kind of those that rise to the very top. Windshield surveys, so as we drive around town, all the inspectors are very good about including businesses as they see a new business come in. That's primarily how we do it.
And Snohomish County has a parcel-based business inspection inventory, and we review every so many years the parcel base to update that. So it's a more stable inventory that we have over time. But we also are responsive to those sites that we see when we do drop-in inspections or tour locations, and we'll include those in the inventory as well. So it's a slightly different model for inventory. I also wanted to add, speaking of inventory, that one more adaptation that we made for COVID, along with the institutional or administrative framework of using a wholesale retail approach, in addition to drop-ins, we adapted some filters to our cartograph database so that we have live updates of data for doing drop-in inspections. And as we began to conduct and fulfill county locations and other institutions, which included special districts such as water and sewer districts and school districts that were closed, but they still operated. We have been moving more towards the open auto-oriented and more open business operations. And this cartograph database is live information that our inspectors can use out there in the field for doing drop-in visits. They can see where concentrations are and zoom in on that as well.
Thank you. All right, so this question's for everyone on the panel. It's a great one. What changes have you made during the pandemic that you're excited about continuing to implement post-pandemic? Maybe we'll start with Kevin again.
I don't know that excited's the right way to describe it. There's the teams. I mean, I think that our using Microsoft Teams for connecting with people internally is a quick way to get together, but I don't know that it's going to completely replace long-term or in-person meetings. Inspections, I still think are better in person. We get some information over the phone and windshield inspections, but yeah, I don't see too much anything we did that we want to completely stick with long-term.
Over Snohomish County, to recap, oops, I'm still muted. Can you hear me? Okay. Yeah. As I was noting, we had progression of safety protocols going from a very general to the more specific, and we've got the safety protocols now for source control specifically, in addition to the non-construction public works-wide safety protocols. And we adapted to an institutional wholesale type of model along with drop-ins. And that was sort of like a lead or management organizational kind of adaptation. But now we also have a database adaptation where we have cartograph filters to give us live updates for opportunities for inspection. And so those are things that are really good achievements that we have now moving forward. Hopefully we can begin to not have to use some of those with vaccinations coming on board, but we still see the need for being very careful for at least the next several months. So these will be useful.
I was gonna put my perspective anyway on one of the changes that I'm excited about, and that is that for our enforcement documents, such as NOVs, we're leveraging electronic signatures now. And even though we do still in our code require that we deliver a piece of paper, many people have been receiving their various compliance documents electronically during the course of the pandemic. And so I'm hoping that that continues into the future.
And I wanted to add, I hope that we can continue calling businesses, at least for the lower risk businesses, and if a manager isn't available when we do our surprise inspection, that I could call the manager from the site. It actually saves us a lot of time.
I bet. Thank you. All right, it looks like we have a couple questions for SPU specifically. Were video calls completed for hybrid inspections or regular calls?
They were just regular calls. We didn't do any video calling, and that's why I still like to do that site visit without talking to them in person.
Great. And it sounds like, do you provide in-house Vector services to businesses?
No. So Seattle Public Utilities will basically never service privately owned infrastructure in any fashion.
Okay. So it looks like, oh, great. We have some more questions coming in. SPU again, with the shift to announced inspections, are you finding less corrective actions than you were with unannounced inspections? Or any differences between announced versus unannounced visits?
I don't think there's really a difference. most businesses don't really have time to fix stuff. Maybe, I mean, I would prefer if they could fix stuff before we come on site. That way they do know what violations they do have. But most of the time, I think we're still finding the same amount of violations, scheduled or not scheduled.
And I can provide a little clarification that our normal practice, even when we find a code violation, is to provide a 30-day corrective action letter. So there's not a huge harm in a business having things that need corrective actions, so long as they get them done in 30 days post-inspection.
Great.
I'd like to reflect on there are people out there in business community, and those that aren't too hard hit are actually glad to receive our inspectors. And I've spoken with another lead in another county, and people are glad to have this contact. And one of our inspectors reflected that he'd say the most are happy to comply with the inspection process, aside from extra issues such as PPE and social distancing. And so we've got the we have the planned inspections and we have the unplanned inspections. They're pivoting from planned to the unplanned. The cartograph database allows us to filter out those opportunities that are relatively safe and open essential operations that we can conduct business inspections with. And I can't say that we have more or fewer than we've had before in terms of corrective actions. It does take more coordination, as Angela and others were reflecting on, because of the economy and the greater coordination that has to happen.
Thank you, Arthur. And it sounds like you might have touched on it, but it looks like for Kevin and Arthur, do you conduct announced or unannounced inspections, or both?
We do both. You know, obviously with the businesses that are not open to the public, like a manufacturer, they might have a small amount of pool of employees, and we don't want to have anything to do with a virus outbreak at their place. We don't want to be pointing a finger at us. So we make sure that our PPE is to their standard before we would go in there. Places open to the public would be your standard, you know, face mask, PPE. You know, as far as compliance, to one of the objectives during COVID and knowing that businesses are under financial distress is always trying to find those affordable, quick fixes to their immediate problems. So maybe back, you know, prior to COVID, we would have wrote them a letter and said, this is what you need to do. And we didn't really care whether or not they hired somebody to do it or they did it themselves. But when we went in there, we go in there now, we really do try to find those opportunities for them to make the correction on their own and save some money. So we try to think about their bottom line too.
Yeah. And I'd like to add that there are two kinds of announced inspections. There's that the announcement where you want to be able to coordinate a common meeting time and agree on certain kinds of protocols. And we find those more in remote locations or those that are harder to access, like farms and so on, where we're conducting our TMDL inspections. But what we found is that you can actually leverage points of control, and that's where the wholesale retail model comes in. And yes, you do announce your inspections that way, but you can also harvest more opportunities at the same time.
Thank you. All right, our next question for the panel. Any specific education and outreach on proper disposal of gloves and or cleaning wipes, not flushable, on social media platforms?
Yeah, we were working with our communications department to message that out on our Facebook. I haven't checked though to see if that had gone out yet, but more or less we were targeting just the places where we had problems with blockages in our sewer, and we were handing out our typical BMPs, handouts for those.
I'd say that with us, it's not so much on proper disposal. We were just, our main emphasis was making sure that during the point of contact and inspection that we had acceptable PPE and practices that were being employed on both sides. And that could happen on the spot when you have drop-ins. And that puts a lot of discretion on the part of the inspector. Or in the case of one special district, we had a whole survey we had to fill out. We exchanged our survey with them. So there was a little back and forth over there, but we didn't look so much at the disposal aspects. I'll defer to Tacoma for that.
And for Seattle Public Utilities, unfortunately, this isn't the right team to speak to that really. There is another group who is working on especially the not flushable wipes. That actually has been an effort that was going on pre-pandemic. To be honest, I haven't heard anything about the disposal of gloves, so I'll be looking into that a little more. Yeah.
Thank you. So it looks like we have time for one or maybe two more questions. I'm not seeing any more in the chat, so I was going to go ahead and ask the panel. As they say, hindsight is 20/20. Looking back on the last year, is there something you would have done differently if given the chance? And Arthur, do you want to start with that one?
Well, that's a good question. It's where if we could anticipate what was going to happen, we could have planned for it better. But it was always a moving target. And I suppose a way of addressing that is to have some capacity or resources that you can begin to adapt or employ. And knowledge is just as important as it is physical resources. Moving together as a team, and coordination and communication. So I'd say that having clear coordination, having a good knowledge about your resources, all kinds, and being able to harness the ideas and thoughts of many people together to formulate a plan and move quickly. That's one lesson learned out of that. One other thing I'd like to say is it's nice to have extra capacity, but how do you build that? And it's always a challenge. You want to make sure that you're fully staffed and that your staff are well trained, and that they also have opportunities to explore new ideas and bring innovations back in, and that we can be more responsive to changing times.
Thank you.
Yeah, I second that. That's great input.
We would have filled up our warehouse with N95s.
Well, thank you all. This has been a really great panel, and we really appreciate everyone taking the time to be here with us, especially on the lunch hour. If you would like to contact any of the presenters, their information is available in the program. And I know that, you know, this team is all phase 1 communities, and our phase 2s are looking to build out their inspection programs. So please feel free to reach out to any of these experts, because they've done, you know, just amazing work over this, you know, last year. Thank you all for attending. It looks like we're going to wrap up.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.